Hello, happy Tuesday. That feels like a Monday. So I wanted to jump on today and talk just a little bit about getting on TV or radio and exactly how much expertise you have to be to get those kind of opportunities, because I've been speaking with several of my clients and potential clients recently, and it's come to my attention that a lot of people think that they're not big enough yet to be on TV and radio, and in most cases that hasn't been true at all. So I've got a great story I'm going to share with you about one of my clients today, but I also want to just talk to you a little bit generally about what people are looking for, talent bookers and producers, when they put you on TV or radio. If you guys are here live, I would love to see you say hello so I know who all is here. And if you watch this on the replay, feel free to leave comments or ask questions, and I will check back and look at those later. I will wait just one more minute here for people to jump on. I was actually running around my house and thought I was running late, but I got here right on time. Hi, Bobby. I see that you're here. Thank you. I hope everybody had an awesome 4th of July weekend. For those of you who are here in the United States or who celebrate 4th of July, unfortunately, I was sick. I ended up in the emergency room most of the day Friday, and they essentially put me on bed rest for the weekend. So not a lot of fun, but a lot of relaxing and recharging. I am almost back to 100%, so hopefully I will continue to feel better over the next couple of days, but excited to be here to talk to you guys about TV and radio, because those are things that really helped jumpstart my career and allowed me to go from being a corporate attorney to being a sports business analyst at big outlets like ESPN and Forbes and Fox Sports and that kind of thing. Oh, thank you, Bobby. Yes, I am feeling better. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with those of you who are here with us live, and then anybody who joins later, feel free to join in the conversation. Okay, TV and radio, what are they looking for in terms of expertise? So I posted a couple of weeks ago about a client of mine who landed her very first television segment, and someone replied to my post about it and said, how many years do you have to be in business before you can be on television? And I'd never really looked at it that way, or thought that I should, explain to people kind of how it works. So it was a great question, because it got me really thinking about what people's hangups are about getting on television, radio, and maybe why people aren't putting themselves out there. So I can tell you a little bit about the first time I got on TV and radio, and also about my clients. So when I got my start, I did radio before I did TV. When I did my first radio show, I think I had done one podcast previous to that, somebody who had found my blog and asked me to be on their podcast, and I had so much fun with that, I thought, shouldn't I be able to do radio too? So to get myself on radio, honestly, I just emailed around at radio stations trying to get in touch with the right people to get on the shows, and told them a little bit about my background and why I thought they should have me on. And funny enough, if you guys have watched some of my previous lives, you may have heard me say this before. It's actually how I met my husband. My husband was a producer at a radio station. He was the recipient of one of my emails asking to be on the air. I always like to point out, he never actually had me on the air. To this day, I've never been on that show, and it's funny because I am now friends with both of the co-hosts, and I've still never been on that show, but they're lost, right? But that was the first contact I ever had with my husband. We did not start dating at that point. I think it was like a year later. We knew people in common. I started actually doing TV with the two co-hosts on his show, and that's kind of how we connected. And it ended up being a tweet that ultimately led to the conversation we had offline that led to our first date. But I digress. Okay, so actually getting on radio, honestly, that's what I did. I just emailed radio stations and radio shows that I wanted to be on and told them a little bit about myself. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty specifics of how you pitch in this particular live. It's something I can do later if that's something you guys are interested in. What I want to talk to you today is when you know you're ready to be on radio or television. Like I said at the beginning of this live, some people come to me either as a client or as a potential client, and they're really hung up on this idea that they're not a big enough expert to be on radio or television yet. And I just want to tell you that you probably already are. I don't really think I've had anyone come to me who wasn't ready. They might not have felt ready, but everyone that's come to me that I've had this discussion with, ultimately we've ended up talking about pitching for TV or radio. You only need to be an expert in your own experience, okay? You don't have to be the world's foremost expert on a particular issue. You don't have to be, a six-figure business owner. You don't have to have been in business 5 years. Like there's no metric like that tells you that you're ready to be on television or radio. It's really about how you frame what you do and the types of opportunities that you go after. So I'll tell you the story about my client. My client who is going to have her very first TV segment in a couple of weeks. We are actually meeting tonight to do a little media training. I'm super excited. It's always fun when you land people that very first live TV segment. But we were able to land that through a connection I already had with a talent booker at a TV station. And I was able to have a conversation with that talent booker before I pitched and just tell her a little bit about my client. My client is an expert on millennial finance. And again, she's an expert on her own experience, okay? She's someone who coming out of college figured out how to quickly pay off her student loans. She's not a financial advisor, although her husband works in that industry. Her experience is really what makes her an expert. And on top of that, she's been blogging about the subject for about 6 months now, very consistently. And she got the opportunity to do a one-off blog for Forbes, which we were able to turn into a regular contributing position with Forbes that pays, by the way, which is awesome. And those were kind of her credentials. And she actually does not have any current product or service offerings. She doesn't have a single client. So when people ask, how old does my business have to be? Do I have to be making 6 figures? When you're looking for those kind of metrics, that's not necessarily what you need to be on TV. What you need is a really well-defined niche, okay? So this client, her niche is millennial finance and career advice. My niche when I started going on TV and radio was the business side of sports. You need that very clearly defined niche. Okay, the problem is when people come to me and they tell me that their niche is leadership. That's not really a niche. That's a pretty big area. When you talk about leadership, is it to a certain demographic? Is it just women, or is it people in a certain age range, or only people in a certain industry? Is the reason that you use leadership as your topic, did that come out of some sort of experience you had, okay? You really have to sell your story and your experience. That's what makes you a great guest on TV or on radio, for that fact. Really, they're not all that different. Most people do radio before they ever do TV. It's sort of a stepping stone, but it doesn't even necessarily have to happen in that order. So you need that really tightly defined niche. And then you need to know what shows you want to go on. So what shows do you listen to or watch that have guests? Okay, if they never have guests, it's not worth pitching. You're not going to be their first ever guest. Or if they only have guests every once in a while, that's probably not the right place to go. You want to start with television shows and radio shows who have guests every single time that they come on. And then pay attention to the topics that they have on, and that will give you a pretty good idea of who their demographic is. You can poke around on their website. Sometimes you can find fact sheets about the show or about the station. A lot of times they're in a press kit that's meant for sponsors and advertisers, but that's a great place for you to get demographic information. It's actually the same way if you want to pitch yourself for a magazine. They usually have a media kit that they're using with advertisers, and that will give you awesome information about their demographic, because your pitch better be for their demographic, okay? That is where most people go wrong, okay? They pitch something that is a niche and that they are an expert in, okay? They get past that first hurdle, but then they pitch it to the totally wrong audience, okay? A producer or a talent booker wants you to come on and educate their audience or provide some sort of value to their audience, okay? So the talent booker that I was talking to about my client, I knew that millennials didn't really watch the show, okay? So her expertise is millennial finance and career advice, but millennials don't watch this morning show. It is mostly stay-at-home moms, and I believe the demographic at that station is somewhere from like early 40s to early 60s. So I couldn't pitch a topic directed at millennials. Instead, I needed a topic directed at their parents, okay? Because it was probably their mom watching the show. And so I went back and forth with the talent booker, brainstorming things in person, actually before I even told my client that we were having the conversation. So I was able to kind of soft pitch, talk to my client, make sure that she was comfortable with doing television because she had never done it before. And then we got back with the talent booker and we got down to a topic the talent booker loved. It actually was a topic the talent booker found on my client's website. It was a blog that she had previously written. So you've got to have that tightly defined niche, identify the show, figure out what the show's demographic is, and then pitch something that both positions you as an expert for your niche, but also delivers value to the demographic on that show. Okay, there's still value in my client going on that show, even though millennials aren't watching it. Even if millennials are her target market for products or services, there's value in going on there because she's going to be able to take the video from that TV appearance, post it on her social media, post it on her website, and it is going to position her as an expert. When people are checking her out and trying to decide whether to work with her, that's going to credential her essentially. That is going to give her more credibility because she's been on TV. You know, fair or not, when people see that you've been quoted in major publications or you've been on big TV and radio shows, that gives you an instant level of credibility. And so oftentimes these type of things are worth doing even if your ideal client isn't necessarily watching or listening to the show. Okay, it's all about strategy and about how you take that appearance and leverage it. That's something I work really closely with my clients on. We don't view anything as a one-off, not a blog, a podcast interview, a TV appearance. None of those are one-off things. Those are all opportunities that we can leverage in a number of different ways to get results, to get clients, to do other things and have bigger and better opportunities. So, you know, my client that I was telling you about, I mentioned earlier, she doesn't have a product or a service right now. She doesn't have a business outside of blogging, and we were able to land her a TV segment. Okay, so it's not about how long you've been in business. It's not even about how much money you're making. It's having that tightly defined niche, finding a show, figuring out their demographic, and having a topic that both fits within your niche and reaches that demographic. Okay, almost everyone I've ever talked to, we've been able to piece all that together in a way that they were able to land radio, TV, or both. Sometimes it's guest blogs, sometimes it's podcast interviews, speaking engagements. You know, it really depends on the person and their goals and which formats they're comfortable with. But if you're questioning whether or not you're an expert, stop. Okay, you probably are, because you are an expert on your own experience. Okay, that's what's important. Don't try to position yourself as the foremost expert in your field, and maybe you are. I've met a couple of those people along the way, but you don't need to position yourself like that. You only need to position yourself as an expert on your own experience. Okay, I am going to drill that into your head. I'm going to say it over and over. You're going to see that language in my social media posts, in my emails, and on my website. Expert on your own experience. And that's why it's so important that your personal story be part of your pitch, and that you work on what we've talked about before. If you watch my live, your why statement. Okay, if you haven't watched Simon Sinek's video on the power of why, you're going to want to watch that. Okay, because you need to figure out what your why is, and you need to weave that into your pitches, whether it's for guest blogs, podcasts, TV, radio, whatever it is. That's the most important thing you can do, is show that you're an expert on your own experience by weaving those details into your pitch. Okay. Michelle says, I love that. Thank you guys so much. Does anybody have questions? I will stick around for a couple of minutes and check for questions down in the comments. There's a little bit of a lag between when you guys comment or leave a question and when I actually see it show up. So I will hang around for a couple of minutes. And if you don't want to ask now, you can ask later. I will be checking back on the thread and answering any questions. If you would rather ask it more privately where no one can see, you are welcome to send me a private message here on Facebook, or you can email me, Christy@guidemybrand.com. You can always check out my website for more blogs on this sort of thing and more information on my services and that sort of thing, www.guidemybrand.com. I don't see any questions, so hopefully you guys feel energized and empowered by this, and you're starting to feel like you could be an expert, you could be on TV and radio. I want to see you guys out there landing those kind of opportunities, and if you need help with that, you just ask me, ask your questions, ask how to do it. I am happy to help you. Like I said, if you watch this on replay and you want to leave a question, I will check back in the comment thread later and be happy to answer questions. So I don't see anything else coming in. I am going to run and continue getting caught up on all the work I'm behind from the last few days, and I will check back later and answer any questions you guys have. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday, and hopefully I will see you later this week on another live. Thanks, guys.